Hello, I'm James Knapp Jr., and I'm doing some study today, looking for errors in commentaries. Here we have first, I'm going to go through 10 commentaries today. I'll stop when I see a mistake. Darrell Bock. Commentary on Mark. Looking through what commentators are saying about Mark 16, 9 through 20. He says, the manuscript evidence suggests that 16:8 is the original ending of Mark, given that the two earliest extant manuscripts, Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, in there. These two manuscripts, Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, are from the 300s. Erroneous quotes it in the 100s. How this makes sense to Dr. Bock, I have no idea. To me, when it's from the 100s, it says it's older evidence than the 300s. That's the way math works in my world. He says, certain church fathers, such as Clement and Origen, did not know of the longer ending. Again, Dr. Bock, if you were here, I would say Origen hardly ever uses, this is just one of many 12-verse segments of Mark that Origen does not use. That is simply an argument for silence, and a very weak one. As for Clement, Clement never hardly uses anything outside Mark chapter 10. So again, not only an argument for silence, but it is so lightweight that it's barely worth mentioning. It's basically we're seeing here in Bock's work, Bruce Metzger being vomited back up on the reader. So, if you're reading this, you're reading vomit. Dr. Bock isn't doing his own work. He's just saying what Metzger said, as so many commentators do. Going on, he says, whereas Eusebius, Jerome, and Severus noted its absence in most of the Greek manuscripts they knew. Severus, again, not right. Read my book, The Case for Mark 16:20 for details. As for Jerome, he's simply parroting Eusebius. Jerome openly admitted that he recycled other people's work. And in his letter at Hedibia, to Hedibia, at Hedibia, that's what he's doing. Jerome's just taking Eusebius's letters to Marinus, and he's putting part of it in Latin when he's writing to Hedibia. Jerome himself did what Eusebius did. He told Hedibia to keep Mark 16:20 and just use a comma in verse 9. Why this guy doesn't tell you that, I leave it for you to decide. Maybe he can have time. Maybe Dr. Bock has time to revise his commentary sometime and tell us the whole story, instead of only picking out the pieces that fit his theory. Eusebius recommended to Marinus keep the ending, because you could always see by the nature of Marinus' question that Marinus had this passage in his copies. As for Jerome, Dr. Bock, is Mark 16:20 in the Vulgate? Yes. Dr. Bock, did Jerome quote Mark 16:20 elsewhere? Yes. And his letter against the Pelagians. So, where did Jerome say that he had seen the Philologion? Oh, it was between Mark 14, Mark 16:14, and Mark 16:15 in Greek copies. Again, reading through selection is tenuous, not safe. Reading from Darrell Bock can be hazardous to sound interpretation. He mentions Edwards, another commentator. But I don't read commentators tell me what commentators said. For those commentators, I'll have to pick up their commentary. On to the next one. The Cambridge Bible. Surely Plummer should be able to get things right. He says, Codices Vaticanus and Sinaiticus are supported by other good witnesses, such as the Sinaitic Syriac, that's the most unreliable copy of Mark and Syriac, but the oldest manuscripts of the Armenian and Ethiopic versions. Wrong. Plummer, unfortunately, made the same mistake that many other scholars of his generation made. They read what was written in by Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T, and misinterpreted it as saying missing was actually, as Metzger acknowledged when he had to retract his claim, when he did retract his claim. Metzger said, I've checked this claim out, and I've discovered we've all been wrong. Now, Metzger is still wrong if you read his textual commentary, you read his book, the text of the New Testament, that's why was published after he passed away, the fourth edition. On one page, it says some Ethiopic copies don't have these verses. But if you turn to another page, it says, I checked, and they all have it. So, first, Marinum, you need to do a better job editing because you say two opposite things in the same book. And second, any commentator who is saying Ethiopic copies don't have this passage are obsolete. They're all echoing and vomiting out the same junk they've heard from somebody else. They're not doing their own work. They're just repeating what they heard from somebody else. You're hearing a rumor in these commentaries. Commentators of today, verify your data. Don't just vomit Metzger. It causes so much trouble. Next. We have here Rawlinson. The Gospel ends in the two best at 1608, and the two oldest and best manuscripts, Aleph and B. That's Vaticanus. That's Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. And he goes on and says things about Eusebius without going into detail. But again, Eusebius' comments have been presented in full in Roger Pierce's book, Eusebius of Caesarea, Gospel Problems and Solutions. You can get it for free online. I recommend you do so. Otherwise, when people just get snippets of Eusebius' comments, if they're using Metzger, which most of these guys do, he only picks out snippets. And by you just getting part of the story, you don't see the whole picture. See the whole picture. Eusebius said that a person could say that it's missing in the best copies, or in the most accurate copies, or in a lot of copies. But then Eusebius goes on to say how a person can include it, and that's what he recommends Samaritans to do. Plus, Eusebius himself, elsewhere in his comments, quotes 16:9 twice, so it's in his copies. Now, Eusebius, having died around 340, is older than Sinaiticus. So, if he's quoting it, then it has to have been older than Sinaiticus. So again, age means nothing when it comes to manuscript authority. Our oldest manuscript of Jude, P72, is very badly copied, very badly transcribed compared to a average medieval copy. Next, Garland, Dr. David E. Garland. Well, it's supposed to be a commentary on Mark. We don't see his comments on Dr. Vizinine's warning. Instead, we see the same old thing. In the earliest and most reliable manuscripts, Mark's Gospel ends with verse 8. Calling Sinaiticus a reliable manuscript is simply wrong. That's incorrect. I can show you in case after case after case. Your average medieval manuscript is more accurate than the text in the average medieval manuscript is more accurate than the text in Sinaiticus. And if you would like proof, read my book, The World's Oldest Bible, Reliable or Liability. It's on Amazon. So Garland kind of keeps the evidence at a distance and says in the other most reliable manuscripts, Mark's Gospel ends in verse 8. How many is that? 2. How many manuscripts do you have it? Well, Eusebius knew it. Irenaeus knew it. Justin knew it. Justin Martyr in the 100s. Haitian knew it. Jerome knew it. It's in the Vulgate. All their manuscripts, they haven't been lucky enough to survive, but they're obviously there because they're quoted from. Let's try Mr. Cole. After verse 8, he begins to say, about verses 9 through 20, this section in the so-called longer Indian mark, omitted in some manuscripts, and stigmatized as spurious by some early authorities, such as Eusebius and Jerome. Okay, stop there. Again, why keep the details from the reader? What's the point of this vagueness? Some. What he means is two. Vaticanus and Sinaiticus. And by the way, in Vaticanus, at the end of Mark, there's an abnormal blank space. And it's big enough to hold verses 9 through 20. I've done it. You see my recreation of the text of verse 69 to 20 in that blank space. When he says it's stigmatized as spurious by some early authorities, such as Eusebius and Jerome, who else does he mean? Jerome had it in the Vulgate. And Jerome committed to Hedibia after he had recycled Eusebius. He said keep it, just put a comment in Mark 69. And Eusebius, again, committed to Maris to keep it and just put a comment in verse 9. And Eusebius could have changed his mind. Anybody on the deathbed can say all sorts of things. But this is the kind of thing that passes for scholarship. How about Andreas J. Kostenberger? He says on page 271 in the EEGNT series, the ending at 68 is attested by Aleph and B. That's Aleph B. That's Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. The two oldest manuscripts of Mark's Gospel, as well as our 304, a number of early version manuscripts. Again, and then he says, C.F. Metzger, C. Metzger. Well, I've seen Metzger, and Metzger's full of misleading information. Very often I see that, again, commentators like these are just basically looking at Metzger and parroting out what he said, and not testing the data. Test your data. Like John Bergman said over 200 years ago, verify your references. Is there any mention of the blank space in Vaticanus? No. Is there any mention that in Codex Sinaiticus that there is a replacement page that has the mark? No. Why not? Because Metzger never mentioned it. These people only know as much as they've read in Metzger. They haven't consulted the evidence directly. There's just parrots. When he says 304, look at my blog, the text of the Gospels.com, the text of the Gospels.com, and you'll see my analysis. 304 is not a normal manuscript like we think of a continued copy of Mark. It is a commentary manuscript. It has Mark's text, then commentary, Mark's text, then commentary, Mark's text, then commentary. So at the end of Mark, the commentary is using, that's based on, that text on, is from Theophylact. And if you get a copy of Theophylact's commentary, he does indeed comment on all of verses 9 through 20. My deduction is that 304 is simply based on a copy that was damaged. Next. Here we have John O'Donoghue and Daniel J. Harrington, the Sacra Pagina. Again, what do I see when he comes to discussing verses 9 to 20? The name Bruce Metzger. All of these commentators are obsolete. He says, this is Harrington, I believe. The passage known traditionally as Mark 16:19-20 appears at the end of Mark's Gospel in a large number of manuscripts. How large? Over 1,650. How many in verse 8? 2. 3 if you got 3 or 4, but again, that's a glitch. He says, there's no indication that Clement of Alexandria or Origen knew it. Wherever I read that before, in Metzger. You might as well just read Metzger because that's where this is coming from. He says, Eusebius and Jerome claim that it was absent from almost all the Greek manuscripts known to him. Now, that's, again, using the old, let me show you over here, but not over there. It's made to switch. He doesn't tell you that Jerome had it in the Vulgate. He doesn't tell you that Jerome quoted it in against Pelagians. He only says what he wants you to hear to make his case. They're being very lawyerly. So once again, you're only getting part of the story. You might as well just read Metzger, because that's the way this is coming from. This is just Metzger again, being parroted. Next, this looks like a big book. We should probably take this seriously, right? Mark, a new translation with introduction and commentary by C.S. Mann. C.S. Mann. And the Yankee Bible. Page 674. In brief summary, the following major manuscripts omit this ending. Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, and then Latin, Fabiensis, the Sinaitic Syriac. So, Vaticanus, Sinaiticus, the worst transcribed copy in Latin, and the worst transcribed copy in Syriac. Okay. Then he says, the imported manuscripts of the Armenian, Georgian, and Ethiopic versions omit it. Where have I heard that? In Metzger. And then Metzger later on say he was wrong? Yes, Metzger was wrong. So was everybody else who said, like Eusebius, Nita, that the important manuscript in Ethiopic omitted. All the copies of Mark included. Next. Well, I guess that does it. So again, if you're looking for errors in commentaries, you don't have to look very far. This is just the first batch. I can do this, God willing, next week. Bye.